Welcome back to another edition of Mastermind Minutes. My name's Gary Occhiogrosso. I am the managing partner for Franchise Growth Solutions. That's this big sign behind me. You can learn about us by hitting our website at frangrow.com, learn all about what we do. And Mastermind Minutes, for those of you who are joining us either on the webcast or the podcast for the very first time, it's a very simple concept. We have one guest. We ask one question, we get one expert answer, and we usually try to do this in about 10, 15, sometimes it's 20 minutes, but I guarantee it's minutes, not hours. So today, my guest is Zack Fishman, who is a lifelong franchise geek, and that's by his own admission. He's been involved in the franchise space since he could walk, literally. Ranging on everything from franchise development to digital marketing to public relations, Zack has devoted his life and his young professional career to understanding the ins and outs of the franchise space, really like very few people that I know who are maybe 3 times his age or certainly twice his age. Currently, he is the Director of Innovation for Fishman PR, and he'll tell us about that in just a little while. Fishman PR is a firm that specializes in franchising. Some of my clients have used them, great firm. And he runs the development efforts really for Fishman PR and Franchise Elevator, and he helps to innovate the agency's product offerings to the various clients that they have. So, Zack, welcome. Thank you very much for being with us today. I truly appreciate it. Before we get into the question, first tell us how you're doing in Chicago, and then tell us a little bit more about Fishman PR and what you've been doing.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Gary, for having me. I really appreciate it. It's always weird because I do my own podcast, so it's always funny to be on the other side of the fence here. And I'm really happy that we could hop on here and talk for a little bit, about a subject that I am quite passionate about. I have to be, but I'm excited to talk through it. And Chicago here is pretty good. We're a little bit ahead of New York and New Jersey in that we probably are trending about 2.5 weeks ahead of you guys, but we were locked down while we were watching all of our friends in Georgia and Texas opening up about a month and a half ago. So we were in the same boat for many months, which is okay. But we're doing well now, and just went back into the office for the first time. Our senior team did last week. So all really exciting, and looking forward to hopefully getting back to whatever normal is these days soon.
Great. So tell us a little bit about Fishman, your work there, Franchise Elevator. What have you been doing? It's a relatively new role
Yes.
for you. Not the franchising space, but being back in Chicago, because I know you were in New York for a couple of years. So tell us what you're doing right now with Fishman.
Yeah, so Director of Innovation, I still don't exactly know what it means, I will be honest, but I will say that it certainly means I'm wearing a lot of hats in corporate speak, I suppose. So as you mentioned, I am leading all of the business development efforts. I had to relinquish that from Mr. Fishman, so from Brad Fishman, our CEO, who also happens to be my father. It's always a bit interesting experience to be working with your parents, as I would soon find out. But I am wearing a lot of hats, innovating on all the different offerings that we're providing for clients. And I suppose just giving a different outlook on things. For many years, I was in the tech space. And so obviously there is a little bit more of an analytical sales cycle to that as opposed to PR. And so I think that it was helpful to have more than my father being the numbers behind what we do around the office, which was really great. And, Fishman PR has been around for actually next year, it'll be our dirty 30, as our COO puts it. So we've been around for 29 years, and Franchise Elevator has been around I believe for 7. So we have been around for a good amount of time between those two, and we're servicing brands of all shapes and sizes and industries. We've worked with many of yours in the past, and I think that right now it's a really interesting time, especially for franchising. Franchising, I always like to say, is is quite representative of the entire economy, and the entire economy, of course, in the past couple months have suffered quite a bit, but there have been some really large success stories coming out of this as well. So I think that one thing I'll talk about a little later is that it is important to understand that there is a certain negativity to what's been going on, but what are you going to do to change that, and the positive spin on it? And that's really all that we preach at Fishman as well. So that's a
Well,
little bit about us.
First of all, thanks. And I can tell you, we miss you here in New York, but I'm sure Brad and Sherry are happy not only to have you back in Chicagoland, but also to have you on staff and working
I'm
in
not
the
allowed
firm.
to leave anymore.
Yeah.
I'm stuck here now.
Well, I guess the last part of your statement really kind of leads into the question that I have in mind. And you know, you're in the franchise space, you're in the PR space. It's interesting because you know both sides of that coin. How do you feel franchising, maybe in general or specific, however you want to speak to it, and PR in particular in that space is going to evolve as we start to come out of the COVID pandemic? You know, will there be a lot of changes? Where do you see it fitting in, just overall in the franchisor space?
Yeah, so I mean, it's funny because I know that you and I have talked about what I'm going to first go through many times before offline, but I think that the way that people are going to be researching brands and where they're going to go to do that is going to evolve incredibly quickly. I think it really, you've already been seeing it. I think that the first way is that, I think that PR is going to allow people to have a little bit more of an emotional connection to a brand that feels more organic. And I think that at the end of the day is what PR is all about. The idea of PR, back when I was a kid was all about lead generation, right? It was just another lead generation source. Whereas now PR is thought of in my mind as a little bit more of lead development. And so it's you're getting leads from PR, sure, but I would say that it's more about people who are going on to the various different lead sources like a portal onto a website, they're talking to a broker, they are automatically going to go online and do way more research now than they have done many years in the past. And so what it's all about is having a third party really validating a certain pitch that the PR firm is putting out there, right? And so I think that that's really, in my mind, the first thing that's really going to change is that as you see millennials begin to become more and more into the fold and being the breadwinners in their respective households around the country, I think that that's really going to change. Because one thing I can tell you as a millennial myself, I don't really trust ads in the same way that the Gen Xers and the baby boomers did, right? I think that I want to do something that everybody else is doing, and I want to feel an emotional connection to a brand. Otherwise, I'm not going to be loyal at all,
Right.
right? I mean, that's something that you see time and time again. And so the best way to do that is not to necessarily talk about, like why you can make so much money. I mean, for a certain candidate, sure, that makes sense. But I would say it's more about what the stories behind the franchisees, the story behind the actual brand, how they're helping within a community, why they're going to be relevant coming out of the pandemic. There's a lot of ways to really think about this. But I would say primarily, it's about that emotional connection first and foremost.
Hmm. And I agree, and I think that's always been, you know, the true value, so to speak, of PR, where you get an opportunity to tell your story and you connect in a very real world way, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to, you know, I guess straightforward advertising, where you're basically talking at someone for 30
Mm-hmm.
seconds or 60 seconds or whatever. You know, there's no ability to kind of get inside the story. So I guess the second part of the question here was, you know, how do you see it changing, if at all, for, you know, coming out of COVID? Do you see it more of PR being used as a tool to build trust for people? Like we were talking offline earlier before we
Mm-hmm.
started the program about restaurants, and I had mentioned I'd mentioned to Zach that a lot of folks I know are still a little nervous about going into restaurants, and they don't necessarily believe the advertising. So, do you see that the PR is going to have to take on more of a trust building role?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's really what PR has always been about. It's about building trust with the consumer on a consumer level. That's really what it is, and you're spotlighting, do's and don'ts and five tips, and positioning yourself as a thought leader in something, right? I mean, that's really, and the best part is that you're not writing a blog post where you are touting yourself as the thought leader. Somebody else is actually making the conscious effort to say you are a thought leader and I believe it, so I'm going to write something in Forbes about you. and here's why I want to give you a spotlight. And I think that with PR, where I really see it changing, number one, is that it is going to be a big component is going to be about building that trust. And I think that the best way to do that is not only to be doing these things on a national level, but to really dig deep when it comes to, the regional levels as well. And I think that that's something that has often been ignored quite a bit. And I think that that's one thing that our team has really prioritized quite heavily, because we have something that we've been talking to folks about we dubbed them our reopening America packages. And so what these basically are helping people to do is that at a local level, the franchisees are going to get some guidance from corporate, right? But I think that every community is going to be different. And so I think it's important to take care in that way, because New York and Jersey and Chicago have taken a longer amount of time to open up than our friends in Dallas and in Houston and Atlanta, right? And so I think that every community is going to have a different perception. There's going to be different things going on depending. And so I think that it's important to get more regional and even local about how you're educating folks, because I think it's going to be a really big effort to get people to really, for us to get some more consumer confidence again, especially in restaurants, but really across the board. I mean, this has affected personal care and fitness and all of these different industries that were really booming they were booming pretty well before this really all got
Yeah.
started. And
Yeah.
so I think that, there's never been a better time to be an unsexy brand in franchising right now, as I've been hearing, which is funny.
Yeah,
But
no, I guess, and I think it's an interesting point that you make, and I agree that, your opportunity to tell the story locally or regionally, and again, in my business and in the franchising business in general, yes, you want to promote the brand on a national level, but I think when you look at the challenges franchisees have had in their own individual businesses. And by the way, I don't care if you're running, a restaurant in a chain that might only have 10 units, or if you're running a McDonald's restaurant. At the end of the day, the franchising business, the restaurant business, has been negatively impacted. So I like the idea of using PR to really get into the community and really and have an opportunity to tell a story that's unique and specific and one off to that particular market, as opposed to just some blanket statements. So I really I really definitely connect to what you just said. Zach, there's so much more we could talk about, but we try to keep these things to 10, 15 minutes. As I usually tell the folks in the audience, these are just kind of teaser conversations. This is a teaser
mhm.
question. Certainly there are people who are intrigued by what you've just said. There are people who definitely need the services that you provide. So why don't you just tell folks how they can reach out to you to further the conversation, learn more about Fishman, learn more about the services and the help that you can provide on a PR basis, as we come out of the pandemic. How do they reach you?
Yeah, of course. So the best part about working at Fishman is that our emails are very easy to find. And if you want to get to my father, my mother, or myself, you simply just do our first initial and fish at fishmanpr.com, and you'll be able to reach any of us to make it really easy. And I also have no problem giving out my cell phone, because as Gary actually first met me, folks, when I was selling a texting technology. So for me, I don't care who has my cell phone. So it's 847-373-8873. And please feel free to call or text and reach out to me. And if you have any questions about anything, even about things that are non-PR, one of the best parts about, doing what I do is that PR is at the intersection of many things across franchising. So if Gary can connect you to people that you need help with, I'm more than happy to offer my help as well.
And that's great, Zach. Thank you. And again, for those of you who are watching and or listening, you'll notice just above or below the webcast is all of Zach's contact information, and you just reach out directly to him. So again, Zach, I want to thank you for being with us. I know that you and I we share a lot of clients, so I'm sure I'll be seeing you live and in person soon enough. I don't know where and when, but hopefully,
Nobody does.
hopefully. So again, thank you so much for being with us today, and I appreciate your comments.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Gary. I really appreciate you having me, and talk soon.
Great. Thanks, Zach. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.